Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. This is the TA chart analysis for February 18th, but we're going to go over a lot of fundamental analysis as well. Well, Bitcoin did not move that much today. It moved down a couple hundred points, but not really all that much. If you can look at the 1 day graph, you can see that we're actually slightly up, maybe like 100 points from last night at around the same time. But generally, during the day, it did actually move slightly downward, as you can see right around this area here. So what's causing that? Well, increased uncertainty in Ukraine. We did actually start today with the stock market slightly up, but that turned south very, very soon because there's more troops massing on the border now. I don't really know what Putin is going to do. He's been very cryptic, and he might actually attack after the Olympics. We will see. The expulsion of the diplomat from the United States from Moscow was done in retaliation to the U.S. expulsing one of their diplomats as well. And they actually have stationed more troops close to the border in attack position. However, that does not quite mean they are open to attack. They are remaining open to dialogue, and hopefully we can actually resolve this diplomatically. I think Ukraine and Russia is trying to solve it with diplomacy. Russia basically wants guarantees from the United States and the West that Ukraine and Georgia will never be allowed to join NATO, whereas the West and Georgia have the stance that no, we're continuously denying them entry into NATO like we have for the last 15 years, but we're not going to say we're going to do that in perpetuity. And Russia obviously doesn't like that. The reason Russia actually wants security over Ukraine is the same as Crimea. They need to guarantee their access to the Black Sea port. Remember, Russia does not have a year-round warm water port without the Black Sea, and they need guarantees of the area around there, the areas around there, to actually have their warm water port. So essentially, the situation is very, very tense there, but I do think a diplomatic solution is possible and probably even probable because I do think invasion will cost both sides very, very dearly. Ukraine's army is ready to go as well. And, Ukraine as a nation is pretty divided along the Dnieper River. People who want to rejoin the Soviet Union and people who do not want to rejoin the Soviet Union. So it can actually go both ways. But that is the overriding concern right now. I know some people think that the Freedom Convoy is bringing down the price of Bitcoin, and that might have something to do with it. But I think it's mainly the Russian tensions. For those of you that don't know, Justin Trudeau is possibly taking the worst way out of trying to take the worst way possible out of these protests. He's being stupid and freezing bank accounts of the protesters, which, by the way, you shouldn't actually be able to do. Because, yes, you might be able to remove them from the international bridges because there's laws against blocking traffic, especially at entry points. You might be able to remove them from private neighborhoods because of private property laws and maybe zoning issues, but you cannot prevent protesters from basically protesting at the Capitol in Ottawa. And they can blast their horns all night if they want to. That is public property, and they are allowed to do that. So you got two choices for Trudeau. You either remove the restrictions, because they're probably going to be removed in a couple months anyways, or you just let them protest. If I were him, I would just let them protest. Just as long as they don't do anything violent, there's no harm in them just letting them sit out in the grass and protesting. I don't think there's any reason for you to freeze their bank accounts or freeze their supporters' bank accounts. That just makes you look really bad. If you just let them protest, it might fizzle out after a while, or they might be there until this whole thing blows over. Not really sure how long they can stay there. I remember back 12, 13 years ago, we had a protest in Wisconsin as well with the teachers union, and essentially they just let them protest for a couple of weeks, and that's actually what happened. I forgot what the result of that was. I think they got some of their demands, but not all their demands. But that's basically what happened. As Canadian citizens, just like as American citizens, they actually have the right to protest, as long as it's not on private property, and probably if they don't block the roads. I remember my dad saying a bunch of employees want to protest in AT&T. They basically had an area where they could protest, but they couldn't actually block a lot of traffic downtown. They could protest right in front of the AT&T building within certain bounds. Obviously, the bounds are much, much larger for this kind of protest. Like, Capitol building, public land is fine as long as they don't like block like certain important roads and, like they don't infringe on other people's private property, which I don't think they've actually done right now. So the thing is, like, that might be affecting it because Justin Trudeau has shown that he actually can blacklist Bitcoin accounts and stop crypto donations. So that might actually be like a precursor to actually building some crypto infrastructure, which would actually be pretty cool. Now, in terms of the numbers, like you can see, obviously this week we've been solidly down because of the Russian situation. We were actually doing really, really well before the whole Russian news actually hit. And right now the TA is not really all that relevant until we get the diplomatic situation straightened out. Whether you think America should be in Russia, whether you think we should support Ukraine, whether you think NATO should support Ukraine, or do you think we should just let Russia take Ukraine? I mean, that's going to depend on your own alliances. But right now, this is actually what's driving the stock market and the crypto market. And that doesn't seem to want to change anytime soon. So we're going to be updating this weekend with what's going on. The Olympics does actually end this weekend, by the ways, and that could be a precursor to invasion, or at least a partial invasion. Putin's strategy could just be to salami slice up Ukraine as well. So on the technical analysis side, on the daily, it is favoring sell right now. The oscillators are pretty neutral, but the moving averages all pretty much say sell. The 50 is way below the 200. And because of the recent drop, although we're still in the 40,000, just barely hanging on to 40,000 right now, until this Russia situation is over, unless you want to take the very extreme risk of buying in case of good news Monday after the Olympics, saying that Putin is backing down, which is very hard for me to see. I would actually just hold on until like the situation moves forward. If Russia attacks, I would definitely buy the dip. If Russia doesn't attack, then, well, you're a little bit more safe. DCA is still fine, of course, as always. But right now, I would hold off on any big buys unless you know for a fact that Vladimir Putin is actually bluffing and nothing is actually going to happen, which I obviously cannot guarantee. On the 1 week, same thing, basically. Like, I think, like, I don't really need to do the analysis for the week of the month or the month. They essentially say pretty much the same exact thing. The technicals and the price every day doesn't actually matter all that much right now. It really has to do with diplomacy, and it's being driven completely by geopolitical events. So regardless if you're investing on the day, the week, or the month, I mean, if you're investing 5 or 6 years down the road, yeah, it's going to be fine. But like whether you're investing like short term, like weekly, monthly, or maybe even 5 or 6 months, it is going to depend a lot on the geopolitical situation over there with Russia and Ukraine. And I would actually hold off until Monday to see what they actually do. Because you don't really want to buy it right now. Have them invade. And after the invasion, have it drop like 15,000 points. And then be like, well, I should have waited. So, if you want to DCA in, like DCA in a bit right now. But I would actually hold off to see what actually happens. Because there's a lot of danger. There is actually a lot of like uncertainty here and a lot of danger here. And right now it's kind of a toss-up to whether they say Russia will actually invade or not. Our Secretary of State thinks they are. Our military generals think they are. But Putin is pretty crafty, and he could just be bluffing to try to get concessions. So that's my news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button, and I will see you guys later.